Well, things are heating up in Houston. A massive anticipated rematch between Israel Adesanya and Robert Whittaker, the middleweight belt on the line there, as you see now. Since dropping the title to Adesanya 3 years ago, Whittaker has won 3 straight, but it is a stacked card. A lot of people in our newsroom, they love the co-main event there between Derek Lewis and Tai Tuivasa, so you can expect fireworks there and maybe some beer drinking out of shoes, because that's what we get. Let's welcome in the dynamic duo behind the Morning Combat podcast who is not above drinking beer out of shoes. Brian Campbell and Luke Thomas here. Let's talk about the main event, though. Adesanya Whittaker 2, a rematch from the title fight back in 2019. BC, I'll start with you on this one. The biggest change each of these guys have made since that last match.
Yeah, certainly what's dominated the storyline almost 3 years after the first meeting is what happened to Robert Whittaker and how different is he heading into this. Look, the former champion will tell you ad nauseum if you ask him what he really went through the tail end of that short title reign, which ended, of course, in the second round knockout against Adesanya. His body had given out multiple times. There were multiple pulling outs of fights. He had injuries. He had the mental stress of being on top. That all led him into this fight against Adesanya, where he now can tell us Adesanya was kind of hitting his head as well. However, that affected him the first time around. Adesanya proved he's the best middleweight in the world. But the 3 performances since then for Robert Whittaker, all decision wins, all over top dangerous contenders. He showed the complete evolution of his game. Any lingering effects physically or mentally just don't seem to be there for Robert Whittaker. So he saw his title reign come to an end the first time, but he's done all the work to get back to this second chance. And he'll tell you himself he feels he's better off for having gone through that experience.
There's no doubt, if you're asking who has made more changes, who has undergone a bigger metamorphosis since their first contest, as BC indicated, it would be Robert Whittaker, but we should not lose sight of the fact that the champion has been steady working. First, you can see a big change in his physique, at least from his UFC debut until now. He has really filled out at middleweight. But on top of that, he already had a striking advantage, and what you have seen him do is slowly begin to address all of the other things that he's had to work on, and there should be something that doesn't get talked about, but really should. Israel Adesanya, since coming to the UFC, has never been injured. He's never had to pull out of a fight. He's never had any kind of issue. I'm sure he feels not 100% going into these contests. No pro fighter does. But what I mean to say is he hasn't had any time off. Yes, vacation time, time away to settle down. But in terms of a regular training schedule, and by the way, when he was first in the UFC, he was fighting every 2-3 months on a consistent basis. This guy has put in years at this point of dedicated work at the top level to shore up some of those deficiencies. You see that every time he goes out there, the Jan Blachowicz fight at 205 notwithstanding. Yes, Robert Whittaker has made more changes, but the champ has made incremental progress just the same.
Okay, BC, we'll start with you on that one then. When it comes to Adesanya, what would a win mean for him and his legacy?
Look, for Adesanya, he's not quite there yet at besting Anderson Silva's all-time great status as the best middleweight in this sport's history. But he's getting close. Adesanya just signed a monster new deal with the UFC. We don't know the terms, but the UFC making him, as they say, one of the highest paid fighters in the history of this sport. He's a global star representing multiple countries, but you get a second win, particularly if you can do it again by stoppage against somebody the class of former champion Robert Whittaker. These are the type of victories, title defenses, moments in your career that take you to a higher level all time. I think we're watching a setting here of this rematch between 2 potential all-time greats. But for Adesanya, having that first win in his back pocket, giving his stardom level, the new deal, everything that comes with that, I don't even think he's going to stop at middleweight if he wins this fight in terms of the titles he will continue to chase. But he is knocking on that door for Anderson Silva, even if he's not quite yet ready to pass it, to stand pretty close to him in terms of history.
Yeah, I mean, sorry about that. I can hear it great now. But the answer to the question, I still think there is some distance between Silva and Adesanya. You do see the records there, 13-10 in terms of the win streaks. But if you look at the overall title defenses, Anderson Silva has 10, I think, to this point. Adesanya just 3, so there's a little bit of work to do there. But understand something. When Adesanya first came to the UFC, fans were a little slow on the uptake. He's a very unique and sort of highly unusual guy in certain ways. But that has very much changed. The fans have certainly embraced him. So obviously a big win on a big stage will catapult his star power even further. But to really understand something, whether he's close to Silva or not, a contender the likes of Robert Whittaker is about as good as it gets. Folks, this is the real deal Holyfield. For a guy like Adesanya to get a win, 2 of them, over Robert Whittaker, if he can manage that on Saturday, would be as excellent a pair of middleweight wins as any champion could get in virtually any weight class. It would be a huge achievement. So you add the star power component on top of it, and he is going to be playing with house money if he wins.
By all means, Robert Whittaker does not want that to happen this weekend. BC, you have an article on CBSSports.com detailing how the Reaper can reclaim that belt. So what does he have to do? I mean, you talked about all the great progress he's made since that last title fight. What does he need to do in this one to get that belt?
It sounds simple, right? He's got to be well-rounded. I think Robert Whittaker's the most well-rounded fighter in the game today on the elite level, but the strategy he brought into that first fight with Israel Adesanya, where he was over-aggressive and coming in on a straight line and allowing Stylebender to stand back there and pick him off as a counter-punching sniper, that's not going to work in the rematch. What Robert Whittaker needs to bring to the table is everything he does bring. He's just about even an elite across the board when you're talking about hand speed, punching power, boxing technique, IQ, chin, stamina, ground game, defense. He has it all. He's going to need it all. The one thing he cannot do is allow this fight to take place in the areas of strength that Adesanya has, and that would be allowing the champion to stand back and pick him off. Whittaker's got to have the threat of a takedown, of course, but he's got to find a way to vary his game, and I think he has all of those skills, mind you, to pull off this chance upset in the second fight and possibly create the opportunity for an even bigger trilogy, maybe even this calendar year.
Two things I'm going to be watching in this fight. Number one, in Whittaker's first 9 middleweight fights, he attempted a total in 9 fights. He attempted only 5 takedowns. That includes the Adesanya loss. In the 3 subsequent fights, he has attempted 22 takedowns, a just completely different way to approach the game. It's not takedown or bust. It's mixing in all of the other pieces of his offense that all kind of work off each other that can keep Adesanya off balance. If you just try to strike with him, we saw what happened the first time. I don't think that's the best way to do it. The other thing that no one really is talking about, which I think is crucial, why did Jan Blachowicz win against Israel Adesanya? Partly he was bigger and was able to pancake him on top. But the other one is that he took away his leg kicks. He checked them immediately, forcing Adesanya into boxing with him. He's not as good of a boxer. He's actually a much better kickboxer, and that really nullified Adesanya's offense. Adesanya won against Vettori the second time, and in other fights, like the Romero fight, off of the leg kicks. It's the jab for him. Everything is set up off of that. Everything runs through that. You take that away, he has to go to another gear. Again, easier said than done, but that's what I'm looking for.
So the last time these two guys met, Adesanya got the win at the second round via KO. What is your prediction for this one? Luke, I think you can hear me. We'll start with you.
Yes, sorry about that. I hear you just fine. So to answer the question, I'm going to go with Adesanya. Now, to be clear, if anyone is picking Whittaker, and I think BC is, I don't want to spoil. I'll let him tell his story. But the point being is it's entirely justified. Folks, this is a very, very competitive fight. But I'm going to lean with Stylebender. I still think he's got more ways to win, even though Robert is technically, I would argue, a little bit more well-rounded. I just think the striking prowess and his adjustments, what reads he can make and how he can adapt his game through the course of the fight is going to be the difference maker in the end. I like him by TKO.
Look, if anyone can beat, and it's such a short list, right, who can beat a prime Israel Adesanya at 185 pounds, at the end of the day, it still is Robert Whittaker. You watch the tape, you see the physical condition, the mental condition, everything about where he was the first fight. He's just different now. The 3 wins he's had since that 2019 loss tell that story. It's going to take everything he's got, and I think this goes the full 5-round distance. You'll see judges just as much as us media experts split at the end of the day, but I think Robert Whittaker can control, if he can control, the terms of this bout, the pace of it, where it takes place, far better, of course, than he did the first time around. He'll set up the shot to get a close decision. And like I teased before, we could be talking about a trilogy because these two top 10 pound for pounders, this is as good as it gets in mixed martial arts. I can't wait.
Hey, we love a trilogy, and I hope people are noticing the odds down there via decision plus 400 for Robert Whittaker, so make some money on that. Okay, guys, as I mentioned coming into this, it is a stacked main card. BC, what other fight are you looking forward to?
That middleweight matchup, same division, Cannonier Brunson, number 3 versus number 4. UFC President Dana White wouldn't bite down officially on this being a number 1 contender fight, but the winner of this one is going to be right there looking for a title shot. 2 great stories, Cannonier 37, Brunson 38, both really operating at the best peak of their career up to this point. Brunson's had a 5-fight win streak. I don't know, though, if he can have the same success he's had against lesser competition, taking down and ragdolling against somebody as big and dangerous as Cannonier. Either way, the winner's going to be looking for the winner of Saturday's main event.
It's a great fight. I'm going to go with one that actually has like a really sort of like middle of nowhere kind of placement on this card, but is actually pretty interesting and kind of important to a degree. I'm going to go Alexander Hernandez taking on Renato Moicano. Moicano, the Brazilian, this was a guy at 145 who was supposed to be the next big thing down there, and he gave good fighters really tough fights. He nearly beat Brian Ortega until the last second. He's done good work, but he kind of got overwhelmed and bumped up to 155 and is on a rebuild process. Alexander Hernandez came into 155 like a bat out of hell, beating Beneil Dariush and a bunch of other guys, but then ran into a buzzsaw on Donald Cerrone. Has kind of been up and down since then. This is a real question of, hey, if someone's going to have a future for two, relatively-ish young guys, who's going to have a future in this division? The winner here is going to be in a much better situation. The other one's going to have some serious retooling to do when it's all said and done. An important contest.
My family lives in Houston, and I just checked, though, tickets are very pricey for this. So they're going to be watching from home like most of us are. Luke and BC, we appreciate it. The guys behind the Morning Combat podcast, an award-winning podcast there. Make sure to download and follow for everything in the world of fighting. Of course, they have a huge preview leading up to this fight as well. Again, download and follow. Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.